Hi guys, Brian here with BMK Retro Gaming again, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a bit of a review of the Hyperkin Retron 77 Emulation Hardware Clone Console, which is one of the Atari VCS 2600. And it's a pretty decent one, though imperfect, but I happen to like it and I use it quite a bit where I can. It comes in a pretty nice little box as far as I'm concerned here. Shows you that it works with HD audio and video. It has an aspect ratio for both 16.9 for your modern flat screen HD TVs, and also can be converted to 4.3, which was the original aspect ratio of an Atari VCS 2600 back then. It uses micro and regular HDMI cables for connection, and comes with its own controllers. Not much else to the box. Here is the unit itself. In terms of hardware components, I'm not really going to open it up, as I'm much better at taking things apart than I am at putting them back together. But you guys can kind of see here, it does have the equivalent of an original Atari VCS 2600 cartridge slot, which is very nice. And let's see, on the front here, you have a button to save your progress in-game if you like, along with one to load it from where you saved it in that particular game. You also get a reset button and a mode button, on and off power switch, skill buttons for player 1 and player 2, 2 controller ports, and on the back we have a micro SD for hooking up to the power. And then, of course, you have the output here for a regular HDMI. Micro HDMI, I'm sorry. And then, of course, you have a fry button, which can have some interesting effects on your gameplay. I don't use it much because I like them as they are. Here's the button in the middle to change your aspect ratio. See if I can get that to refocus again. Okay, there we go, I think. Getting closer, closer. Hard time getting my focus back. There we go. Okay, as you can see, that color black and white. And here is the memory slot, which contains a mini HDMI. Mini micro SD card, which contains your firmware. The original out of box is decent, but not the best. They look pretty much like this. This is the original, which came with my particular unit. And it's pretty basic, your basic type of micro SD card. I have one that was updated to a Stella 6.4 version firmware update, which is what is in my unit now. It contains the Atari 2600 collection, which is contains 850 plus game ROMs on it, along with the Stella 6.4 firmware update itself. So, excuse me, had a bit too much soda this morning for my caffeine fix. And you also have a nice little manual here which talks about various things, especially, you might want to know about, like, when playing cartridges from the cartridge slot. It's useful to know it mentions that you want them to be very, very clean, as the cartridge slot itself is very, very sensitive. And even just a bit of dirt or dust, it's not going to read right. Of course, in the original state, with the original firmware, it is not so great at reading everything. It will do about 99.9% of original library games with no problem. And you might find a handful or two that doesn't play, such as Pitfall 2, which has a extra chip in it. It doesn't recognize it from the cartridge, though it will through a game ROM on SD card. I have heard claims that it can, with enough of a Stella firmware update, that someone got it to recognize a Pitfall 2 cartridge that way, maybe because it has the game file, but I have heard that some of the firmware updates, for the most part, do help to resolve a lot of compatibility issues. And you can get firmware updates such as the Atari Age community build at atariage.com. You can download it there. It's run by Albert Uruso, who is a pretty nice guy out of Round Rock, Texas, as far as I understand. He works with some developers and some other guys who send him stuff, and he mostly handles distribution all by himself right there out of Round Rock, Texas. And I'm in Nacogdoches, Texas, which is pretty convenient, since anything I order there, like homebrew games, etc., don't have to go through any other states to get here, so it's pretty fast. And there are also ones like the Atari 2600 collection I got, which I've heard and seen that some of them and some homebrews on them may be unauthorized, which I did not know at the time, so my apologies to any homebrew developers or the original Stella emulator developer for not having realized that. I certainly did not mean to cause any insult or offense to anyone inadvertently. We've all made those mistakes when we get into collecting and trying to expand upon our gaming capabilities, especially retro gaming. I've seen it a lot. Anyway, this right here is the power cord. It's basically very similar to, it uses a mini HDMI, which is pretty okay. Can kind of see there, it's a mini HDMI here. Very similar to what you might use to plug in your smartphone these days. And has a little bit of a brick here to go to connect into your wall, the adapter. And that I know of, the adapter is let me focus that again. There we go, I think that's a bit better. The adapter uses a 5.0 volt, and that's one reason why it's very specific to the console. You don't want to try to run this off of anything with different than a 5.0 voltage output, and it's okay with that. I'm going to set this aside. The controller, I'm not going to really unwrap it or anything, but it is very similar to the original Atari VCS 2600 joystick controllers for the most part. You can see it's a 9-pin, and it has a very, very nice long cord. I forget, but if it's with a 5-foot extension or what. Let me see if I can find here. Yes, it has a 10-foot cable, so you have plenty of room. You also have 2 fire buttons, so you can basically play left or right-handed. The joystick itself screws on and off, which I know some people don't really like, but I've found it to be kind of convenient. For others which have this type of setup, you can theoretically switch them out. If, say, I've heard some people claim that they have broken the joysticks on these controllers. I've had mine since late last June, I believe, and haven't had that issue, but I'm probably a bit gentler and don't get as frantic and rough in my gameplay as some others might. And you can pick up an extra one of these for around just over $15 or so to get an extra, and they also make one with more of a brown coloring and all that's a bit heavier and a bit of an improvement on this one. It also will support original paddle and joystick controllers, though other controller support is a bit iffy, even with firmware updates. I have no doubt, though, over time with more firmware updates to the Stella emulation firmware and all, that it will probably get to a point where everything is supported. It can play just about everything. And it's an imperfect emulation hardware clone of the Atari VCS 2600 so far. But yeah, it uses a little bit of hardware and a little bit of emulation to go ahead and give you pretty much the same experience. I've heard people say before that it's more or less like a modern remake of the Atari VCS 2600. In a sense, certainly, as I said, an imperfect one, but very nice and very good entry level. Anyway, that's pretty much about it for that right there. Just in case you guys want to check out something like the Atari Age community build or something like that, and other things there, I will leave a link to the Atari Age website down below. If you like my content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And don't be bashful about leaving any comments, questions, or suggestions in the comments section. Have a good morning, and I will see you all again in my next video.